And we are live. First, happy birthday, Omawale. Let's see. David Lee Brewer, Beyonce's coach, vocal coach, from when she was, I think he started with her about 8 years old. He has a book coming out called Raising Genius, A Teacher and His Prodigy. Comes out October 31st, 2016, and October 24th, you can get a pre-order book. So Google David Lee Brewer. His website is www.brewer-international.com. Just Google David Lee Brewer. You'll find it out. You'll see videos about him. We've done hangouts with him, all of that. So today we have entertainment attorney, Ben Mclane from, okay, I done lost it again. What was it, Ben?
McLean and Wong. McLean and Wong.
McLean and Wong. They're in North Hollywood. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Ben.
Well, I originally grew up in the Midwest and not really the best musician in the world, so I decided I wanted to work in music, though, because I loved it so much, and was back in those days in the 80s trying to figure out, like, what can you do in the business if you're not really like a player? So, you know, I saw that there was managers, lawyers, accountants, executive types that were quite important, and there were roles for people like that. Of course, I didn't know anybody because I wasn't really, you know, I was in LA, New York, or Nashville. I didn't have any family in the business, so I just decided the best way for me to get in would be to go to law school and have a credential and kind of like ease my way in, which is really how I did it. And, you know, early on I had to do a bunch of internships at record companies and management companies, because at first I wasn't sure if I wanted to be a manager full-time or an entertainment lawyer full-time, so I was kind of straddling that and managing a few bands on the side and just, you know, meeting people, networking, and then eventually got a few clients on the legal side that started having some success, and it just goes from there. It's, you know, like anything else, you just build it up, and you have to stay in the game a long time and stay current, which isn't easy sometimes, you know. And, you know, these days we rep a lot of artists, you know, up and coming, a few famous ones, a lot of producers, managers, publishing companies, agencies, even a lot of film and TV companies now, because you know, there's so much content now on the internet and reality shows, and we rep a few TV entertainers as well, and DJs and things like that. So it's a fun business to be in, because especially as a lawyer, we're transactional lawyers. We don't go and sue people in court. So mostly do contracts and advise people, and occasionally try to help artists get a deal with a label or a publishing company if I feel like, you know, they're at that level and I can contribute like that. And, you know, we have a lot of relationships that we build over the years. So that's kind of our practice in a nutshell.
Okay, now Brad's going to have to get out of here pretty soon. He has a client coming in, so I'm going to throw to him real quick. Hey, Brad, what question did you have?
Well, actually, you kind of answered it, but when I first heard that you were coming on, Ben, I heard you were managing artists, and so my question was, as we talked earlier, how does an entertainment attorney end up being a manager? And you know, if you want to go into more detail now for everyone, go ahead.
Well, I have a lot of friends who are lawyers or used to be lawyers and became managers, like one guy named Ian Montone. We started about the same time, and I know he was the lawyer for Jack White and the White Stripes, and when they blew up, they didn't have a manager, and they just really liked him and asked him if he'd do it. And of course, Jack White got to be so big, he just quit being a lawyer and became a manager full-time, and then after that he got other acts on top of that. That just because, you know, when you're hot like that, of course other people want you met. So I think as a lawyer, it's good training, just because you learn the business skills and good communication skills, and you're kind of forced to learn what all the roles are. I mean, you know, as a lawyer, I touched everything. You know, the A&R, the producer, the record company, the publisher, you know, the media, the press. So, you know, it's good training if you want to be a manager, because ultimately a manager is really just like kind of like a quarterback that oversees a career and communicates kind of on behalf of the artist, like as the middle person. And it's good when you have that training. But I don't. I mean, it can work the other way too, I suppose. I mean, there's probably been a few managers that, like myself, early on, that just decided to go full time legal just because it was just too hard, really, to make a living as a manager. Unless, of course, you get lucky with something like the White Stripes, that because then there's income coming in allows you to keep the doors open. If you're
Very true.
just going to exclusively do that, and the problem is, I think if you're in this business, I really think you have to devote full time. You can't really do part time anything. So yeah, I think it would be hard to be a part time manager or a part time lawyer. That's why I think most people do one or the other. But I was mentioning to you before, I see a lot of this going on these days, where there's a lot of co-managers. Because there's a lot of, well, say even like you were talking about Beyonce. Beyonce's dad was not a trained manager. He became a great manager. I actually met him. And he told me the whole story years ago. But a lot of times I work with young artists and their parents are managing them, but when it gets to a certain level, the parents can't handle it anymore, but they're still minors, so they still stay involved, and then they kind of plug into like a bigger management company that has the staff and more connections and experience, and then they work as a co-management team. So I wouldn't be averse to doing that if I found a young talent, but at some point it would probably be too much, because because if an artist really blows up, there's so much time demands on you as a manager to do it right. So, and I have a bunch of clients as a lawyer. I'd have to like drop everybody, and I don't think I'm prepared to do that.
Yeah, that's why I'm a vocal pre-producer, not a producer. That's too much work.
Yeah, well, yeah, but I mean, it can get addictive too, I suppose, if you have something that's really, really successful, and But and hey, if you're lucky, great. But I've found most things, it's having a hit artist. I mean, I don't want to be discouraging, because we all think we're all in this business because we believe in the dream that you can make it and be successful. But obviously, very few artists really do make it to the top and have consistent success, and that usually comes down to great material, of course, but a great team as well, I think.
Great team, definitely. So, how did you spell Ian's last name?
Montone, Montone. You can look him up.
Yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to do.
I think his company's called Monotone
Oh,
Management.
okay.
Yeah,
That's funny.
he's a nice guy. I haven't talked to him in a couple of years, but I remember early on watching kind of how that whole all unfolded for him.
Great. Well, thank you. How does the attorney debating personality work into management?
Say that one more time. Debating personality? Oh, just you mean
attorneys do a
arguing?
lot of debating, right? Or maybe you don't do that.
Well, when you go to law school, they kind of see, that was the thing. When I went to law school, I didn't know I really wanted to be a lawyer so much as just working in the business. But when you go to law school, they force you to do all that moot court and debate, and you have to do the trials and argue with everybody, and you kind of learn how to do that. But that was never. I mean, if I have to argue with somebody, I certainly can do it, and I know the business now. But that was, my personality isn't really so much that I want to sit there and butt heads with everybody intentionally, unless you're forced to do it. But I don't know. But yeah, you do have to argue a lot and make your case, even if you're. These days, of course, especially with my practice, a lot of it's just emailing. I like to talk on the phone or in person. I think you can get a lot more done in a shorter period of time. But I notice a lot of people just want to email, so I end up writing. My arguments tend to be in writing a lot of time. Just hey, you want to get this point in the contract, and you have to justify it in writing. Which is kind of like if you go to court and you have to submit a brief to a judge to win your case. You're trying to convince a lawyer or manager on the other side why they should give in on this point or whatever.
Okay, Sydney, I want to get to you. It looks like now you are driving, or somebody's driving, and we don't want y'all to crash. So go ahead and unmute. You got any questions?
I do. So, especially in this forum, it's perfect. What kind of deals do you make, or what is the standard of the deals that you make with producers who are producing a record for an artist? I'm not gonna say pro bono, but you know what I mean. What kind of deals do you make with those producers as an artist?
Well, are you saying if I'm representing the artist or the producer?
No, you're representing the artist.
Okay. Well, if I'm representing an artist, in a perfect world, I always want the artist to own everything. I want it to be where they own the masters, and if they don't write everything 100%, because they might collaborate with the producer, they at least get the rights from the producer where they have the unrestricted ability to exploit the music any way they want, whether it's downloading, licensing, or even giving it away or putting it online on a video for free just for promotion. Because when, if you own the master recording, that's one copyright. That's the P in the circle. If you flip over a CD, that's a sound recording copyright. If you're an artist and you hire a producer, you're going to own that. It's a work for hire. But if the producer co-wrote the song with you, that's the C in the circle. That's the other copyright, words and music. The producer is always going to have say-so over what's done with that song because it's on the master. So you don't control both copyrights when you co-write with somebody. But you can put in the agreement that the producer's giving you the ability or the right to release it any way you want. You don't have to ask their permission as long as they get paid and credited properly. So that's I always want to get those kind of things into the contract so the artist doesn't have to always go chasing people around, their collaborators, and say, hey, can I do this? Can I do that? What if you can't find them or they say no? It could actually gum up your career. But if the artist has no money or very little money, then the producer's probably working on spec or for lower fees, and a lot of times they're going to insist on owning the master until they get paid what they're supposed to get paid. Like, a lot of times it's done because you're hoping the artist will end up getting a record deal, and then a record deal will fund it, and then at that point there will be money to pay the producer what they normally would have gotten paid if their label was involved from the get-go, because then there's a fund for that. So yeah, I mean, if I'm representing an artist, I'm trying to keep in a perfect world, like I said, they should own everything or control everything, but if not, still have the ability to do what they need to do. So every situation's different, but those are the kind of issues that I think are the most important thing, is the rights. Who owns and controls the rights? Because I've had a lot of situations where I usually came in after the fact, by the way, but there was no agreement between the artist and the producer. They were just in the studio creating, a lot of times on spec, and then the artist just assumed, hey, I can take this music and do whatever I want, and the producer's like, no, you can't. And then everything just kind of goes on in limbo, and then the artist is the one that suffers. Does that help, Sydney, or was there more specific points you wanted to ask about that can go into the contract?
It looks like Sydney froze. He's on. Yep. You back, Sydney? There he is.
Hey, Sydney, did I answer that? Or your other
going through the mountains, man.
You're gonna have to rewatch what he just answered, Sydney, because the mountains cut you off.
Yeah, I got cut off right in the middle of that.
Okay.
You see where you're going at. In regards to when a record label comes along, is it traditional that the record label would buy the masters, or would they re-record the songs? How would that work?
Well, I think if the masters sound amazing, well, I don't know why they would want to re-record them. That's just an extra expense. And labels, I found these days, are averse to spending monies when they don't have to, just because money seems to be tight. But yeah, a lot of times they might just say, you know what, that sounds good, but we think it could sound better, or we want to re-record it with this other producer, or what, that's quite common, which sucks for the producer actually more than the artist. But they usually want to own it. I mean, when it's just like when the artist needs to own it for their purposes when they're independent. Once the label gets involved, they want to own everything, and they don't want any restrictions on what they're doing either. So they'll usually buy the master, or they might license it too. I've found with a lot of indie labels, they'll license it, which means they don't own it, but say for 5 or 10 years they'll have the exclusive right to sell it. But then the artist retains ownership of it. And obviously if you're going to sell it to the label, try to get as much money as you can get, or at least what you spent making it yourself.
Gotcha.
Anything else, Sid?
Makes perfectly good sense.
Anything else, Sid? You asking for Maggie? He's going through the mountains. He's glitching. Okay. I've got a question here. Let's see. Who gets big publishing advances these days? and what is good about it for the artist?
Okay, well, the good part is, yes, if you can get it, great, because it's a big check, right? And everybody can use money, of course, because then, especially if you're a new artist, you can quit your day job and focus on writing, producing, recording, whatever it is you do. So I don't think there's any downside to taking money from a publisher. I personally don't, unless, of course, you're signing an agreement that's so outrageously bad where, you have to deliver like 30 songs a year that get recorded by a major label artist, which would be impossible, or else you go into a there's always a delivery requirement when you do a publishing agreement. It may be for 3 years or three periods, or 2 years or 2 periods, but you don't go to the next period, and you don't get the next advance until you do what's called a minimum delivery, which could just be, say, hey, you have to deliver 10 songs a year. But a lot of times the publisher will say, well, you deliver 10, but at least 5 of those songs have to be released by a major label artist. And these days that's very difficult. And of course, when you're the artist, you have no control over if those songs are getting released, unless you are the artist. But if you're waiting for Beyonce or Taylor Swift to cut your songs, that's way out of your hands. So just be careful about signing a publishing agreement where there's some kind of very strict delivery requirements that you can't fulfill, because then you'll be stuck in the deal forever and you'll never get out of it. But that's one thing. But as far as who's getting the big advances, I mean, the writers that I've been repping lately that got sizable advances, or they were either writer producers that were producing an artist, and maybe that artist put out a single if they were unsigned and it blew up on YouTube, or maybe got a lot of downloads and there was already some money coming in, or it looked like it was going to be a hit. So the publisher's banking on the fact that there's already heat on that writer because they've already got something in motion, or they already had a hit. A lot of times, writers, producers, through relationships they have, might get a cut if they're lucky, and it might end up getting on a record. It might be a single, it might be a big streaming song or YouTube video, whatever, and it becomes a hit, and then all of a sudden there's a demand for you as a writer, and you usually have multiple options at that point. There might be 2 or 3 or 4 publishing companies vying to sign you, and then your leverage goes up. So in that case, you're in a better position to demand a bigger advance. But just reality check, I've found by and large, unless you're a huge buzz act or a buzz writer, buzz producer, under the scenario I just talked about, it's probably going to be a minimal advance at first or something, just because everybody's hedging their bets. They don't want to spend a lot of money on something when they don't have to. But what I do like to put in deals, if you can't get a huge advance up front, you try to do what's called a step deal, where, hey, you don't get big advance now, but if you have some success right away, you have a hit, a top 10 record, top 100 single, whatever, or have more money, triggers where you get more money later. You could call them bonuses, whatever. So that's something else to think about if you're negotiating a publishing deal.
Okay. Francisco has a question for you.
Okay.
Hey, sorry about that. I was doing something else. So what's when we're talking about splits and stuff like that, what's your take on the whole the consent decree and what's going on with the DOJ and the PROs right now? How's that affecting you?
Oh gosh, yeah, I really have to reserve comment on that because it's so new. I don't really know what's going to happen with that. I've been reading Billboard and everything online and all the pros and cons. Right now I don't know if it's really going to change anybody's reality that much. I know everybody seems to be upset because the rates didn't go up, but they didn't go down either, But so I don't know. And this whole thing about whether somebody can take their digital rights and take them, out of BMI or ASCAP to some other third party to do them, or vice versa. I don't really know what options are out. If you're the Eagles or you're some huge act like that can cut a separate deal because you have so much leverage. I mean, I know that there's companies out there that are alternatives to BMI and ASCAP now to handle global rights for all performances, but then these laws that exist, or these congressional rulings or whatever they are, these they're restricting the people people's ability to do that. I've diluted and hard to describe, and honestly, I'm not an expert on it because I'm just kind of waiting to see what happens, like everybody else. In reality, I haven't seen anybody's life change in a major way since, in the last couple months. It seems like it's just business as usual, but everybody's always complaining about something. But I rep artists and writers, so I want them to make as much paid if they don't get paid. So obviously, and the one thing I do see that seems to really be not good is streaming. Streaming's so huge now, and that really seems to be the future, but obviously nobody's really pocketing much money if you're a writer or producer, which, because when you're a recording artist or a touring artist, you can make a lot of money in those touring, selling T-shirts when you're just those rates really need to go up, and they are higher in Europe, by the way, so I'm hopeful about that, but I know that's not exactly your question, but that, to me, that's the trend to go up. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, it's a little delay here. Yeah, I mean, I think maybe I'm wrong, but I hear the whole thing about actually who controls it now is unbalanced, where like someone who has like a 20% share can license that beyond the person that has the like a higher share than.
Well, I'm not, but there's the stuff's already all on appeal, and I think I've found in reality that most companies that license music, let's just say it's NBC, right? You two technically by law, but guess what? They don't take chances. Writers listed, all three, I need to see their signatures. We're not taking any chances. So that's why I'm saying in reality, I don't think it's really changing anything seismically, but that is something that could be a problem. If you wrote 1% of a song and somebody else wrote 99%, and you just let somebody have the 1% just because you're a nice guy or whatever, and all of a sudden they're out there putting it in a porn, and you didn't even know about it, that's not cool, right? So I don't know if that's really going to happen that much, but obviously it's an argument somebody could make.
But you don't see it being
yeah, it's all so new. It's just too new for me to really know what's really going to happen. I wish I knew more about it. I'm just reading. I'm catching up like everybody else is as it goes along.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for that one.
Hey, you're welcome.
Okay, Marcial, you're next. Is Ben glitching or is it just my computer?
A little bit, yeah. It's kind of glitching. So.
Okay. All right. So, Marcial, you're next. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Hello, my name is Marcial. How are you doing? Hello, Ben?
He's doing a little bit more than glitching now.
Yeah.
All right, we'll get him when he comes back on. Hey, Day 4, did you have any questions too or no?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to know Ben's thoughts on when an artist should seek an attorney. At what point in their career? Early on, or is it when somebody approaches them and wants to do business? I mean, when do you recommend involving an attorney in any scenario?
I have an answer for that.
Okay, well, I'll answer too, but Sydney, oh no, who said that? Whoever who wants to answer, go ahead, they can answer first.
That was me.
Okay.
Well, I think an attorney sometimes is more important than a manager in the beginning of a career, because that's when you start making those deals. If you have a manager on board, really, I think you need a lawyer when you have a deal.
Yeah, well, I think it's case by case, but I'd probably tend to agree with Sydney on that, because lawyers by and large charge for their time. So unless you have a reason to hire somebody to give you advice, and they might give you reduced rates, we do, and when people are new, but still we charge something. So unless you have something really to discuss, which tends to be some kind of agreement. I mean, was to do with exclusivity, where you have to sign with somebody for a couple of years exclusively, and it involves you know, splitting you know, rights and money with somebody, you know, that's really important. So certainly you need an expert to advise you on that. So it's, at that point, for sure, you should hire a lawyer and at least get a consultation. But just as far as general direction and consultation and stuff, I'm not sure. I mean, it really depends what your needs are, and I mean, as a lawyer, I would, you know, 90% of what I do has to do with using my knowledge of contracts and things like that. But sometimes it's like, hey, can you introduce me to this person, because we don't know them, and maybe I can make that happen. And that's not really using my brain as much as my Rolodex. So sometimes that might be a reason why you might hire a lawyer, need a lawyer, just because you need an introduction to somebody. But I found most lawyers tend to focus more on the legal aspects of things, and then managers and agents and things like that tend to be more of the, you know, the connectors. But you know, in this business, some people wear so many hats. I know we have to wear a lot of hats, just because that's just the way the business is. So yeah, I think bottom line, probably if you have you're in front of you that you don't understand and major aspect, it's, you know, going to have some impact on your career or life, you definitely should hire a lawyer at that point. But you know, lawyers are good people, and sometimes it's nice to at least know one or have a relationship with one, just so when that time comes, you could, you know, you've got, you know, you don't have to go make an introduction. You're already friends with them, so you've already set that up. Dave, does that answer good enough?
Yeah,
it's
definitely.
always case by case. It's always case by case, you know.
What do you think are what are some of the biggest pitfalls that artists run into today in trying to navigate their careers, as far as a legal standpoint goes?
You know, well, I do see a lot of artists that should hire a lawyer, you know, but they're so used to doing everything themselves, you know, because it's a do-it-yourself world, especially at first. So a lot of times I think artists feel like, hey, I can go read the Don Passman book, and what do I need a lawyer for? I can do it myself. But number one, they've never done it before, so they're probably going to make some mistakes. And number two, it takes away from their creativity, you know, because as an artist, I really think they should focus on making great music. You know, you don't want to, because otherwise you spread yourself too thin. So that's one. So a lot of times people don't know when to even accept good advice, you know, because a lot of times I'll tell people, just in my experience, hey, you hired me, this is what I think you should do, and then they disregard my advice, you know, because maybe they don't agree with it. But I think, you know, and sometimes they just don't follow advice, or sometimes they really dig their heels in and they're stubborn or abstinent about something when they really should be more chill or more open to bend, you know, because, you know, when you're negotiating deals, there's always two sides, and everybody has to be happy. And I think a lot of times young artists, especially if they have a big ego or whatever, they're only seeing one side of things. And as a lawyer, I've learned how you have to see both sides of things, so everybody wins, you know. I mean, you have to read course, but you have to see the other side, because if both sides aren't happy, it's not going to be a good deal. You know, nobody should be taken advantage of. But sometimes I think artists have a hard time seeing the big picture, you know. But that's, again, why it's good to have a lawyer or manager helping.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello. I had a question here. Can I?
Sure.
Oh. So, well, hi Ben, I'm Marcial. So I want to ask you about copyrights. I have a couple questions. Like, do you think like an artist should try to make copyrights on the songs? Like, let's say I wrote like 10 songs. I have like a chunk of demos. You think I should go straight ahead and try to make copyrights on it, or you think I should play the songs wherever I can? I mean, clubs, on media, on Facebook.
Well, it depends. Yeah, I mean, you know, it's, if you can do, obviously it can get expensive if you're copywriting each individual song. But you can have the ability, if you wrote all the songs yourself and you recorded them yourself, you could do a group of songs. You could put 10 songs in a file, an MP3 file, and upload them on one form, and you only have to pay one fee. It can be Marciano Volume one, and then you just list the titles, and then you upload them all, and it's all copywritten. It's all there with the Copyright Office. So if anybody ever challenged it, you have it on file, you know. So it's almost like it's just a shortcut to get more copyright protection for less money. But you know, the major publishers and the major record labels would never do it that way. They do each one individually. Each one, of course, they can afford to do it, but that's one way of doing it. Or I certainly think if you're going to release something in a commercial sense, or even for free, but it could be, you know, once you put something online, it could go viral, go massive. So I think at that point, if you're going to release something, you should definitely copyright it. You know, if you're just cutting a demo and it's sitting in your drawer, no, I don't know. I mean, you might want to wait till you get more serious about it. So it really depends what your budget is. But you know, once you get used to filing copyrights, I mean, I do it for people all the time, but it's not rocket science. You know, you can figure out how to do those forms yourself. So a lot of people, so once you get used to doing it or doing these collections or whatever, especially if you're very prolific, it's not a big deal to copyright things. It's not that expensive when you think about you're protecting your rights. What could be, you know, you could make millions off your music. You don't want to have somebody claiming they wrote it or you ripped them off or whatever.
What is the name of these websites? Sorry.
Pardon?
What is the name of the websites that you just recommended to put all of the songs in one go?
When you do it online. Now it's just like that e form. I don't know if anybody's gone on the Copyright Office online. You can do it digitally now. You don't have to actually print out the form and mail in a CD copy like you used to. You can actually upload MP3s, but you know in the form itself, it allows you to just do you could call it a sound recording and just list just call it a collection of works Volume 1 by Marciano, and then there's a spot where you could actually list the 10 titles and then just upload them all. So I mean, that's how I've done it, but I'm not sure if there's a specific name for it. And then if you actually do usually if you just print it out and do it the old school way, I usually do this. I just use the sound recording, the SR form for that. I mean, because even though you're technically just doing the sound recording as opposed to the song itself, the songs are embodied on the sound recording, so they're filed with the Copyright Office. There's no way anybody could ever challenge it because you got a date stamp on it. It's just a shortcut way to save money. I'm not sure if that answered the question because it was sort of cut out a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I got another question about copyrights. And it's like, if I already have, let's say, some of my favorite songs that I wrote, they already have copyrights. I mean, we have 10 songs with my band that we just did the copyrights on it, and we have the master. I mean, we own everything on the songs. But if we get a deal, let's say with the label, is it still negotiate? Can we still change the copyrights? I mean, can I split the rights on the copyrights? Let's say I found a producer, we don't have enough money to pay him, but we can share the copyrights. Is it still changeable?
Well, what usually happens, and we talked about a little bit earlier, if you own that master and you sign to a record label, they might buy that master from you just as is. And then re-release it as is. In that sense, in the contract, you will assign your copyright to them. They become the owner. They step into your shoes, and it's assigned to them. And then eventually, there'll be a form filed with the Copyright Office on top of yours saying Sony Music now owns these copyrights. Now, that's one thing that could happen. If they decide to re-record those songs, you'll still own your old versions because every version is a separate copyright. So if your original versions are re-recorded by Sony, for instance, you'll still own the original versions because you never sold those to Sony or transferred them. However, sometimes in the contract, you'll transfer things to them even if they sit on them or never use them. But I'm assuming in this case, maybe you can keep your old copyrights if they re-record them. So, I mean, it's always case by case what's going to happen. But if you do a deal with Sony and if they don't want those original versions, those are always going to be yours. By the way, what happens usually when you do that, they'll say, yeah, you can keep those copyrights, but then they'll put a provision in there saying you can't release them while you're with us because we don't want two competing versions in the marketplace. So you still keep your copyrights, but you might have to wait 5 or 10 years to do anything with them until your deal with Sony is over, if that makes any sense. There'll be a restriction on what you, because if you blow up and become the next Coldplay, your old master recordings could be worth millions later, you know. So it's always, yeah.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you.
Now, Ben, let's say you and I sat right here on this hangout, and we started coming up with lyrics to a song. We get this song done. What is the if somebody wanted to take that song and steal it from us? What happens? What levers do we hold? What's the deal?
Oh, well, are you saying you just sat down and wrote it and you never even had a chance to file for the copyright?
Yes.
Okay. Did you release it in any way, or it's just like in a demo version? Nobody's.
Oh, wait, no. Here on the hangout, because we're gonna do We're gonna do songs on the hangouts.
I got it.
We're gonna actually create songs from scratch on the hangouts. Let's
see.
say that as we're doing it, somebody is sitting there, and as soon as we're done, they copyright it. Are we screwed?
Well, it's always a question. If somebody files a copyright, you could challenge it. You could object to it, and you could say, "Hey, that's my song," and then it becomes a legal issue. You know, so just because I could file a copyright or a trademark. I could file a trademark for Guns N' Roses. Doesn't mean I own Guns N' Roses. Just means I filed for the trademark. Guns N' Roses can challenge it, and they would, and they would win because they could prove, hey, we wrote it first, we owned it first. So it's a question of proof. So if you can prove you wrote the words in the music before somebody else did, then you win the case. But unfortunately, you might have to go to court and have a judge decide that. You know, because the problem is when somebody files a copyright, it's a burden. The burden of proof then goes to the person that's challenging it, because the Copyright Office assumes if you file a copyright that you had the rights to it, but that doesn't mean that's true all the time. Some people lie, and that's why there's judges and courts and stuff. But I have found in reality, I mean, I've been in the business a long time, and unless it's like a huge song by Jay-Z, Beyonce, Eminem, I rarely see copyright infringement cases. It's only when something's worth a lot of money then somebody comes out of the woodwork and tries to claim it, you know. But I mean, it could happen. I'm just saying, as long as it's always, you know, in this case, you're saying two people created it together, so you have two witnesses to validate that position, you know. So I think you'd have an easy, you know, it probably would be pretty easy to win that case. It just means you'd have the hassle of having to sue to prove it.
Okay, so we do a hangout like this where it's recorded and everybody's watching.
Yeah.
The whole
you have
world
witnesses.
is
You have witnesses. You have witnesses.
Yeah. And so this right here is considered documentation.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure.
Hey, maybe I'm wrong, but they changed the copyright law so that now that you have an inherent copyright on something once you create it, and
that's always been the case. That's always been the case. But that again, the Copyright Office only knows what's on file. You see, because you can have an inherent copyright and it's in your closet. They don't know. They only know what's on file. So they assume what's on file that's the true owner. And then if somebody wants to challenge that, then it ends up becoming, well, hey, you didn't file it, so you're going to have to go to court and have a judge review these tapes, this Google Hangout, and all the witnesses, and then make a determination of who's really right at that point. But yes, that is true. You don't have to file a copyright. You do not have to have a copyright. Francisco's exactly right. It's just what happens if somebody challenges it is better if you've got it on file, because then the presumption of proof is that you did own it, you know, and somebody's got to disprove it, you know, which is, you know, again, these things rarely happen, but yeah, you're right. If it just has to be in a tangible form. To have copyright in something, it just has to be in a tangible form. So if you create it on Google Hangout, it's going to be on tape. That's a tangible form. You own a copyright. But if somebody else wants to go behind your back and file it with the Copyright Office, the Copyright Office only knows what's on file at that point, you see?
Okay.
Also, just to interject too, it's $35 too. Like he was saying, you can do a volume of work, so multiple songs under one sound recording, and it's only $35 to do it. And then if you really need to go back and actually like register a single song, and say one of your songs blows up, and you're like, look, I have this copyright in this volume over here. You can actually pull it out and just register that song too. So it's $35. Like just really, I think it's worth it just to do that. I mean, it's a couple cups of coffee, I think.
Yeah, it's really not that much money. It's really not. But it is if you have 10 songs and you want to do one each individually. Yeah, it's $350, and that could be pricey.
Sorry, is that the same for me being over here? Because I'm in England, so I don't know what the name of it is or what it would be. I just have to kind of Google it and see.
Well, yes, I've never registered. I mean, I don't know what the version of the copyright office is in the UK, but you could register a copyright in the US if you're foreign. You can. But and by the way, I know that there's this thing called the Berne Convention, and all the EU and the UK and Japan and a lot of the South American territories and the United States are all members of it, where they recognize each other's copyrights. So if you have a copyright in the UK, it'll be recognized here, and if you have a copyright in the US, it'll be recognized there.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Asha, are you able to unmute?
Yes, I think so. Sorry, my first time here. Hi, everyone.
Okay.
Hi.
What's your question?
So my question is from a professional aspect, not a what's fair or what you have been kind about doing, but from your aspect, when you're representing talent or an artist, what is protocol how do I ask this? So what's a fair percentage on the artist's, say, previous contacts or booking relationships? Is it standard or protocol to say put an amount of time on that or provision on that, especially when you have worked to improve the artist's quality of image and sound and everything to enhance their bookable quality, but they of course still, before they met you, have their previous contacts and booking agreements with other individuals or companies.
Well, I see it happen more with, I'll just say, managers. So if a manager comes and discovers somebody that had a pre-existing career to an extent, like you're describing, the manager will say, hey, from this point onward, I want to make 15 or 20% of everything you do in the entertainment career, bookings, recordings, songs, because I'm your manager now and I'm helping create all these situations for you. But sometimes they're still helping make bigger what happened in the past, because you could have released something in the past 6 months ago, and then once the manager got involved, they raised the profile through their relationships. Maybe it got reissued, or maybe they got a sync with a TV show and raised the profile. So is it fair for the manager not to get paid on that at all just because it was pre-existing? So sometimes maybe you could structure the deal for on the old stuff, the manager, instead of making 20%, could make 10 or 5. But or only if the old stuff is somehow re-released or somehow changes its position in a positive extent. It gets a little fuzzy sometimes with the old stuff, because sometimes it's completely excluded, but sometimes it bleeds over, and then the line's fuzzy. So I do think it's fair to a manager or whoever's helping, if they're helping make money for the artist, even if it's the older stuff, they're probably going to feel like, hey, I should get paid on that. But whether they should get paid what they did because they didn't take it from 0 to 60, it was already at 30, and then they took it to 60. That's why I'm saying sometimes maybe it can be built into the deal that they make a lesser percentage on the old stuff, if anything. And it's just like they call it a sunset clause on the other end of the thing. Once a manager's not managing somebody anymore, usually there's this thing called a sunset clause where even after the term's over, they still get paid a percentage, but it's lesser. It goes down because they set up situations that the artist is benefiting from, but then the manager's not really actively working it anymore. So instead of them getting their normal full rate, they get a reduced commission for a couple of years. It could work the same on the front end, instead of, you know what I mean? It could be a sunset clause on both sides of things.
Sure. No, that
But
sounds fantastic.
there's no black and white. There's no black and white in those things. And I just went through this with a manager. I'm working with a band, and they put out 3 EPs worth of stuff, and they have videos, and they've already had syncs. But their new manager that just came on board, she's also a radio promoter, and she's been trying to still work one of the songs that's on the old EP. So she really was fighting about excluding one of the EPs from her commission, because she's like, yeah, it came out a year ago or whatever, but I've been working this single off of it and I'm still working it, and I've really helped raise your profile. So we ended up having to just work out some kind of arrangement where she made a commission, but a lesser commission off that.
Sure. Okay, perfect.
Because we still wanted to give her the incentive to do it, to work, and not feel like she has to work for free. And I'm not sure, are you considered the artist here, or are you the person helping the artist here?
The person helping the artist. So even though that was brought to light or in consideration for the new coming agreements, you know, of course, sometimes the artists want to push back, but when you can prove, hey, within the duration of our time together, those same contacts or relationships have now increased the amount of bookings for you, you know, due to the work. And, you know, of course, there's that emotional attachment where sometimes you let it go, but I want to be in a position where you're...
Can I ask you do you have an agreement, a written agreement? Or are you trying to go back and work off a verbal or just whatever is considered fair, even though you don't have anything in writing?
A little bit of both. The original agreement is rather vague, just because, you know, a lot of times artists just starting out, you know, they fear these big, huge contracts, or in good faith, you say, okay, kind of like between writers or producers and artists, it's like, hey, let's not allow some of the verbiage block anything, so we'll just write something out lightly, and in lieu of something coming on, you know, greater, then we'll sort of revise. And so or if you anticipate, which I do, that transition coming up a lot sooner, I just want to be prepared and protected and take the emotion out, or the fairness aspect, and just say, okay, I need to get realistic and say, you know, since I've said this verbally, I want to be certain that, you know, I'm also being fair to the talent in asking that, because that's what I feel professionally is right, as well as, you know, seeking out advice of other people in the industry is right. So I'm happy to have you sort of...
Well, in a perfect world, you would put this in writing, so there's never any question about it. But if the artist doesn't want to amend or expand the rights now, I mean, you know, yeah, somebody's got to give, but I mean, I really think you have to lay down the law with the artist if you really feel that strongly about it, and you feel they really need you, because I think artists, yeah, sometimes they, again, I mean, it's not a perfect world, but you hope they realize how important you are to them, and that they should be able to give just like you give. You know, it's a two-way. It's like a partnership, really. With being a management relationship with an artist is very, you know, it's like a partnership to me. So both sides have to feel good about it, and you might have to just say, hey, listen, if you're not going to treat me fairly, I'm bailing on this. It's not right. You know, you might just have to really get stern about it. You know. Sometimes you have to do that to people to get them, and then they'll cave. You know, will cave in. You know, because they really will realize, yeah, I don't want to lose this person. They are really helpful to me. But you know, some people are unrealistic. They just are. You know, they don't. You know, they're just unrealistic, or they're not. It's even though they take that position, it's not right. It might be right in their head, but by industry standards, it's not. But they wouldn't really know, and they don't have anybody else telling them that, or else they have like their mom or their girlfriend or something, of course, supporting them. But what do they know? You know, so they might be somebody's feeding their head with the wrong information. So you might have to really, you know, take a stance on that. But you have to take. Of course, you could lose the artist that way too. So
which is fine. I mean, like you say, I think there's that point where you have to say, okay, enough already. Like we all have to get. I always say it's sort of like a professional marriage. So it's like, yes, even though we've been living together and cohabitating and, you know, having this relationship, now it's time to make it formalized. And so sometimes, even though you become stern or confident in it. It's better to have that confidence with support of data versus just what you feel is right.
Right. Well, yeah. I'm not saying you're just pulling it out of thin air, but it sounds to me like in these circumstances you do have the data. But again, with it's such a weird relationship. Like I said, the artist has to really trust the manager and really seek their guidance. Otherwise, I don't see the point.
Right.
Because that's what a manager's supposed to do, is guide the artist, because the artist's supposed to create music or whatever. They're not managers, So if they don't trust you, or they fight you, or they don't, or they want to like cut your legs out from under you, or be unfair, it's not cool. Because then you lose your incentive, and of course this is how we make a living, right?
Right. Well, I find that unfortunately a lot of times what has happened in my scenario is those artists do trust wholeheartedly in the beginning, and then as you actually start to do your job well, and you do build them up, and you do get them more, media or opportunities, or a new scale of imaging, then suddenly they forgot when they first met you. They weren't quite, at that point, and then of course, like you said, those girlfriends or parents or friends or whomever suddenly are like, as if they've done it their entire, by themselves the entire time, and it's just like, are you kidding me?
Well, it's not that's why you have contracts, because it's not I mean, as a lawyer, I don't like verbals, and I don't like vague things, just because this tends to come up more times than not. And hey, listen, I mean, I'm sure there's artists on here too, so I'm not picking on artists, but yeah, that happens a lot where they blow up, and then all of a sudden the first person they want to kick to the curb is the manager who helped them, and it's not right. But that's why you have to have an agreement in place.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, Francisco, is there a question you want to get in before you leave? He just sent me a message saying he's got to get off to the. He's headed out.
Yeah, I got a beach day with the kids, and I try to get as much time in as. I think the biggest thing is I know Matt and I are kind of going through some stuff with starting some new projects and stuff like that. And we're talking about LLCs versus corporations and stuff like that, or whether or not we need stuff like that when it comes to what each of us is doing. So would you mind talking a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, I think if you're starting a business on a serious level and you're planning to put a lot of time and money into it and make money off of it, then you should have a business formation, either an LLC or an INC, a corporation, an Inc. Because, I mean, the main reason is it protects you from any personal liability. There's a liability shield. And then there's different tax reasons why you would do it too, which I'm not an accountant, so I don't want to get into that. But between the two, I like LLCs a little better just because they're less formal in the setup. It's a lot easier to set up an LLC, and there's not as many formalities to keep it going, as opposed to a corporation. You have to have annual meetings, and you have to issue stock shares, and it's a little stricter, but at the end of the day, it costs you about the same amount to set it up, and the taxing is very similar. But the other thing people complain about is they're sort of on the fence of whether they want to. It's like a part-time gig or whatever, and all of a sudden every year they're not making any money, but they have to pay this $800 to keep their corporation or the LLC open. They complain about it. So just you don't want to do it unless you're serious about it. But if you are serious about it, it's good to do it because it gives you a liability shield, and it keeps that business in a separate box, right? You have a separate checking account, a separate tax ID number. So you just, you don't, so you're not like overlapping your personal life, your other businesses with this business. And then it forces you to have an agreement with your partners or your co-members or whatever, like what everybody's duties are, how you vote on things, and who owns what happens if somebody leaves. Again, all that would be in some kind of internal agreement when you form an LLC or a corporation, where they call the bylaws or the operating agreement. So, I think it's probably good to do it, depending on how serious you are with the new business.
Well, thank you for that. I'm going to take off with that. Bye, everyone. Hope everyone learns a lot on this. So I definitely do. Thank you.
Have fun at the beach.
Good to meet you. Have a great one. Will do. Bye.
Waiting on you, Freeman. Uh-oh, looks like Freeman does not have audio. He posted over here to the right that he has a question in relation to what you guys just spoke about. Type it up real quick, Freeman, and we'll I'll come back to it as soon as you're done. Hey, Ben, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, you got any questions?
I do. I got a ton of questions. Hey, yeah, Matt, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it. Hey, Ben, how's it going today?
Hey, man. Good to meet you.
Thanks. He just gave me an invite last minute, so I didn't have a lot prepared, but thanks for coming, sharing your knowledge. I have a bunch of questions, but I don't want to hog the space here. So you guys tell me when if somebody else has a question, please jump in. All right. One question I had was doing work on spec as a producer. I've done a lot of projects. I've been producing for a while, and have most of the time just get paid for my services. And sometimes they're independent projects. Sometimes it's more like a vanity project. Some, had the fortune to do some major stuff. But my question is, every once in a while, I would love to have the opportunity to work with somebody just because I love what they do. And so if I go into the studio with an artist and they're not paying for studio time, because a lot of really talented folks that I know that don't have a lot of bread, and I know I'm going into the realm of what record labels do, production agreements. But just to simplify the question, if there's an artist that I know and I know they're fantastic, I know I can produce an amazing album with them, what kind of agreements would help to make that kind of relationship come to fruition, where the artist doesn't pay any money up front for studio time or production, and you produce quality material?
Yeah, well, we touched on, I think, before you got here a little bit, but you definitely need a written agreement. Simple thing what you'd call a producer agreement, but it would cover, if you're doing it on spec, you should own the master or co-own the master at a minimum. Don't give the ownership all to the artist because they didn't pay you yet, right? But you could put in a provision that once you get paid what you normally would have gotten paid, or the label ends up supplementing that if an artist gets signed, at that point you could transfer the ownership of the masters to them. Until that time, you're going to own or co-own the masters. That's going to give you the control where they can't do anything with it, without your permission. So otherwise they just take it and run, and what do you get, right? That's number one. And then the other thing is, of course, you always put in the deal what your credit's supposed to be and what percentage of the income you should get when the artist does exploit the master, whether they sell it on iTunes, they stream it on Spotify, or it gets put in a sync, TV commercial, whatever it is. You're supposed to get a percentage of the income the artist makes. On average, it's about 20%. If you're a producer, it could be more, it could be less. You definitely would want to put that in there, because that's just your ongoing royalty. Whether you got paid or not, you're always supposed to get a slice of the royalty, unless, generally speaking, unless it's some huge buyout. And then I like to put in, too, if you're doing spec with somebody and they're unsigned, that they're obligated to use you for the next record. Because, the label might want to re-record the record with Rick Rubin, and leave you in the cold, or maybe there's the next record the artist does. You want to have a situation where on paper they're obligated to use you, so at least you're going to be used to do your next record, the next record where you get paid right. Or if they want to get rid of you, there's a kill fee in there, where it's like, okay, well, if they want Rick Rubin to do it, not me, you still have to pay me X amount of money to go away. So those are the kind of things I would put in a deal like that, just to protect you.
So there isn't really a difference between just a producer-artist agreement, whether you're getting paid your top rate or if it's completely on spec. It's the same.
I think it's the same. It's just the ownership of the masters. Because if you're getting paid, it's just straight up work for hire. Usually it says you got paid X. The artist owns the masters under 100% work for hire. In this case, I'm saying, since you did it on spec, everything else is the same essentially, but there's no work for hire language. You own or co-own the master until such time as you got paid what you were supposed to. I mean, I don't know what your normal rate is, but there could come a day where the artist made the money where they could actually pay you what they should have before, or if they get signed, a label will give them a fund to pay you.
Okay. And
you have to have that in writing, or else it's hard to justify it or enforce it.
So I've never done this before, but what happens? Like, what's a production deal versus a producer artist?
Well, when most people say production deal, it's almost like a record deal. It's like you're developing an artist and they're signing to you exclusively, where you own all their recording rights, you own all their video rights. Maybe you publish them. Maybe, just like these days when a label sign artists, they want a percentage of touring, merchandising, all that. That's, there's a lot of producers do develop artists. They have their own studio and they're putting in a lot of their own sweat equity or even money. So they do a deal with the artist where the artist signs to them exclusively, and you're basically become a middleman. Where if Sony ever wants to sign the artist down the line, they've got to do a deal with you, either buy you out or do some kind of joint venture to get the artist. So that's usually what a production deal is. A producer deal is more like what we said originally. Somebody hires you to cut tracks, you get a royalty, you get a fee, you get a credit, but they own it.
So I think I'm more asking about the production deal. So I think I'm starting to venture into that realm. So how much time does you as a lawyer does it take to kind of put together a good?
Well, I mean, I have forms for that. It's usually a couple hours to modify it to your situation. Everybody's got forms. It kind of looks like a record deal. Usually you split everything with the artist 50-50, and then you control everything, and then again, it's just kind of covers you. Usually you have to have, you have the rights to record the artist's next couple albums. Maybe it's the next 2, 3, up to 5. Because if you think this is an artist that Sony might want to sign, like a big pop artist, like Adele, for instance, you'd want to have the rights to the next artist's next 5 albums, because that's the kind of deal they would do if they went directly to Epic or Sony. So you have that in place, right? And you can just pass it through. And that's what a lot of producers do. They just sign. But on the other hand, when you sign an artist to an exclusive long-term deal like that, you're usually going to have to give something. People are going to say, well, aren't you going to give me an advance? Or are you going to pay my rent? Or why would I sign with you? Other than I know you have a studio and you're helping me make tracks, but is that enough justification for me to sign exclusively to you? And usually what I put in deals like that, so it's fair, is you'd have to agree. Listen, I'm developing you. I have all these rights, but if I can't help you get a deal with a real record company within a year, 2 years, whatever it is, you're free to go. We'll still own everything. We'll co-own this or whatever, but you're free to go in the future. So you know what I mean? There's some fairness in there where they're not locked in for the rest of their lives without nothing going on. Because at the end of the day, you're not a record label. You can't do radio promotion. You can't do PR. You know what I mean? You don't have a full staff to do what a record company really does. You can't get the records in Walmart if there's demand for them. That's what a label does. But they still need great records, right? They still hire producers to deliver great records, and because that's really what a label is. They're just a marketing machine to me. They're a bank and a marketing machine, and they go to people like you for the content.
Absolutely. That's really helpful. I mean, I just like to explore for that realm. And I have a couple more. Can I ask a couple more questions here, or anybody?
Sure. I mean, it's up to. I'm here to answer whoever asks.
Ben, you're wasting time asking Ben.
All right, cool. I appreciate it. So I want to talk about session agreements, just real quick. I know it's all over the map. People's adherence to making musicians sign session agreements. But I'm wondering, because I know a lot of major label producers that don't do paperwork when they hire a guitarist to lay down tracks, and so I'm just wondering how important is
it's very important. I mean, you'll get burned if you're the producer and you're overseeing the project. Your job is to make sure all the session musicians sign a work for hire form, because you're supposed to deliver an album to the label that the label owns 100% with no third-party claims. And because I've seen this happen in real life, if you don't get that background singer or that tambourine shaker to sign something, they'll come out of the woodwork later and say, I co-own that sound recording because I didn't sign a work for hire. And you know what? They're right. And they can cause a lot of problems. And then you, as the producer, is the one everybody sues for that, because it was your job to get. So all producers should just have a basic one-page or one-paragraph simple work for hire form. Hey, I paid you X, and then you're transferring all the rights either to you or to whatever label hired you.
Gotcha.
So you don't have to worry about that. Yeah, people that don't do that are taking a big risk.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. All right. Well, that's pretty much the gist of it. Basically, most major label producers are signing session agreements, right?
As far as I know, I mean, I rep a lot of big producers, and yeah, we do that all day long. It's a real pain, but they just have to do it. That's just part of the job.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, cool.
Yeah, most session players that I know that do it for a living, they have no problem signing it because that's just that's the way it is, you know? Hey, I come in, I play, you pay me, I sign the form. I don't own anything. I never did. I never expected it. So it shouldn't be a big deal. If you're dealing with newbies or some new producer and neither party really knows what the hell is going on, well, then maybe it doesn't happen, and that's the problems that pop up later. But the professionals, I've never seen an issue with it because it's just industry standard.
Exactly. All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right, Freeman. It looks like you might have audio. Do you?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. There we go. How's it going, Ben? Appreciate you coming on, man, and sharing all this information.
What's on your hat? 111. What's that?
111 Entertainment.
Oh, that's your company?
Yes, and that's a question that I had, especially when we were just talking about LLCs, and you had mentioned earlier about somebody using the name Guns N' Roses when they were already using it. But my company, I established it in 1998 as a DBA locally. Got an LLC in 2001. I've been maintaining it every year since. And in 1998, I also filed for the web DBA for the company name, and I also purchased various spellings and wordings of the name so that it would cover a bunch of bases. But anyway, make a long story short, last year, a film company in LA started using the name 111 Entertainment. So I travel, so I do work not only here in Detroit, but in various other cities as well. I want to know if there's anything that I could do regarding them using the same name.
Well, okay. So here's the thing about trademark. There's literally like 47 or 48 different categories.
Okay.
So you can have, like, the name. You could have the name, rugby. You could have rugby for, for the game. You could have rugby for tires. You could have rugby for music. You can have rugby for films. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, you can't blanket all 47 categories. When you file for a trademark, you usually pick a category. Like, if you make records, you get a trademark for that. If you make books, you get a trademark for that. If you make hamburgers, you get a trademark for that. And by the way, there's multiple categories you could get a trademark in. You don't have to just be limited to one. But if you just limited yourself originally to music and that's all you do, and you don't make films, or you don't make television shows or web series, and there's a film company that's all they're doing, and they're not making records, you coexist with them. There's not really necessarily any overlap. The only problem is to the consumer that goes on Google and types in 111, they don't know the difference, right? Because they just see the company name, and they might end up, when they're looking for you, they might end up on their website or vice versa. So there's a consumer confusion problem. But I don't know if, and that's sometimes an argument enough to make to the other company to say, listen, I established my company 20 years ago. I'm in the entertainment business. There's too much consumer confusion now. You need to stop. And that might be enough to get them to stop. You'd have to send them a cease and desist letter, and they might stop. But in reality, it may not end up being a big deal for you if they're going to be in that lane and you're going to be in this lane.
Okay, the reason I bring it up is because just like you mentioned with the Google, if somebody goes online, if it was 111 Films, then that's something totally different. But if we're both 111 Entertainment, then if I do a Google search, for example, I bought as many of the names I can get. They just happen to find the 111 spelled out all the way, so it's 1-O-N-E, 11, and Entertainment.
Well, again, it goes down, but it's just like I said, you can have the same name. Two parties can have the same name if they're in two completely distinct categories.
Okay, I got you.
If they're in two distinct categories, there's no, because remember, these laws were all created before the internet. It had to do with, like, does this guy make shoes and does this guy cut meat? They might have the same name, but the guy walking into the store is never going to make there's no confusion. But now with the internet, there is, because everybody's just searching and nobody knows the difference. However, if somebody investigated your website versus theirs and they took the time, they'd figure out, well, this person makes music and this person makes films. So, but they may not go that far with it, right? That's why I'm saying there may be enough there for you to go to that film company and say, listen, we know you're in films, but because of the internet and all that, it's causing consumer confusion. It's damaging to me and it's damaging to you. It's damaging to both. So since you guys came along after me, long after me, I think you need to shut your name down, change it, or I'm going to sue you. You threaten them, right? And sometimes they might back off and go, you know what? You're probably right, or we don't want to argue about it. But if it's a big company and they're well funded, they might want to fight you. They might, but you know what? It's dumb. It's really dumb for a company like that, a modern company like that, to have started that name, because they could have easily done a search and saw, yeah, there is, Freeman's there. Yeah, he does music, but he's got the exact same name. We don't want the headache. Let's just come up with a unique name. So they made the mistake. They really made the mistake, and now you're suffering for it. But what I'm saying is, I don't know if technically you can get them to stop under the law. But you could certainly threaten to, and it might work. If I were you, I would. If it's causing you, if you're losing business out of it, then I think you should at least approach them and you kind of have to take a hard. I mean, you could be a nice guy and just say, listen, I don't know if you're aware of me, but here's what's going on. I'd appreciate if you stop using the name, change your name. And that might work, or you might have to say, if you don't change your name, I'm going to sue you. And then maybe they'll freak out, but I don't know. And if you have to follow up and sue them, you might end up in front of a judge, and a judge might weigh everything out and say, you know what? You guys are in two different businesses. I'm going to let you both coexist.
Okay. Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I have a question for you. People see lawyers as being super expensive. So if I have some contracts and I'm scared, what's an inexpensive way for me to utilize you?
Well, the more, it's all about time, right? The more time that you use a lawyer for, it's going to cost you more, generally speaking. I mean, sometimes we do things on flat fees. So no matter how much time I spend on something, I'm not charging you more than X. But that X figure is usually based on an estimate of what I think I'm going to spend on it, just based on past experiences. And of course, that's not foolproof, because there's things that I thought I was going to spend 10 hours on, I only spent 3 hours on, and something that I thought I was going to spend 3 hours on, I spent 10 hours on. So it works both ways. But I think if you're on a budget as an artist, you should always ask for a flat fee from a lawyer. That way you know how much you're going to spend, what your budget is, and there's no hidden fees or surprise bills that come later. Or the other thing, because we work different ways. We work hourly. Sometimes we do flat fees. Sometimes we do retainers, where you just pay us X and then once a month or whatever, and we do all your legal work for you, and we don't charge any more till the next month. But I think flat fees is quite common for me, because most people are on budgets. But if you're really broke as an artist, you could try to create what you can to the extent you can, find a good form or whatever, borrow a form, then come to somebody like me and have me edit it or adjust it, and maybe not spend as much time as if I created it from the ground up. But I can tell you this, a lot of times when people make their own forms or they find them on the internet, they're so screwed up that it would take me more time to try to fix it than if you just hired me from the get-go. You know what I mean? So it really depends what your budget is, but I think you should just be honest with people. Lawyers, just say, listen, I need a lawyer, but I really only have this amount of money. Can you do it? And then you just work something out. I mean, most lawyers I know, except the giant firms have their rates and their huge overheads, and they just don't really negotiate fees. We're a small firm, so we try to work with people.
Okay, so Hub Real just came in. He's a manager. And if he wants me to sign a contract and I'm scared, because I don't know all this legal jargon, I should pay you basically how many hours to look over this contract, just to give me, make sure I'm not getting screwed over?
Well, are you the artist or are you the manager?
The artist.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, remember, the managers could manage 50 different people, right? But an artist can only be with one manager at a time. So the artist has much more to lose if they get into a bad deal with a manager. So yes, you should at least have a lawyer look at it and advise you on it. But in a perfect world, spend several hours to review it, redline it, negotiate it back and forth, which sometimes there's some back and forth, between their lawyer and you and whatever, until the agreement's in a form that everybody's happy, including the artist. That might take more than a couple hours. But again, if this is something, when you're an artist and you sign with a manager, it's usually exclusive and it's usually for several years, and that could make or break your career right there, who your manager is. So that's one agreement that you definitely want to take seriously. Management agreements and record deals are the ones you definitely want to make sure that they're done properly with the right lawyer. So don't if there's anything you're going to spend money on, you definitely spend it on those situations. But whether it's a couple of hours or 1 hour or 5 hours or 10 hours, it really just depends on the management agreement and how much back and forth there needs to be. Because some management agreements are 1 page long, sometimes they're 25 pages long. Sometimes they're fair, and sometimes they're like unfair. So until I see it, it's always hard for me to know. What people usually do is they'll send it to me and I'll give them a fee quote. Like, I think this is how much it's going to take, and here's my fee quote estimate. Is this cool, or let's talk about it?
Okay. Hey, Hub, do you have any questions?
I do, but I'm trying to figure out how to use this bad boy.
Just start talking. We could hear you.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, my question is, when assisting some of the artists, I noticed that some of the managers I've been talking to have been saying that they were signing like longer term agreements, like 2 or 3 years with artists, but some of the artists hadn't proven their self yet, and then they're locked into these agreements with the artists, and so what they were doing is just going on get the artists on a one at a time basis to see how they work out first. And then if it seems like the artist delivers on their end too, then go into a long-term agreement. Have you heard of, is that like changing and going on?
No, I mean, those are kind of like, it's like I'm not sure what you call it, an interim agreement or get to know each other agreement, which helps both sides. But the problem is when you're a manager, if you help an artist, say, like, let's say after 6 months, if the artist isn't happy, they can just move on. Well, what if you help that artist get really, really big in that 6 months, and if they have the ability to move on, they're just going to kick you to the curb, and what do you get out of it? I mean, so usually the manager has the option to extend it because the manager is the one that's really taking the risk to help develop the artist. So that is taking a big risk if you don't lock them in from the beginning. It's usually at the manager's option. Usually when I do a deal for a manager, I put language in there that the manager can terminate the deal at any time. So if you're not happy as the manager, you can just end it. Now the artist can't, but you can. But if you do it the other way, basically the artist can walk out of the deal at any time, and that's not good for the manager if they built the artist up, So I tend to like more long-term deals, at least because the managers, now this is for the manager, right? If I'm repping the manager. If I'm repping the artist, it's just the opposite. You want to keep it as short as possible. You know what I mean? So I don't know if I think whatever managers you're talking about, they are being very nice to the artist, but they're taking a big risk. They're really trusting that the artist is going to stick with them, and what if they don't? Because the artist might blow up overnight. I mean, I just had this happen with an artist, put a video up, 2 weeks later it had 50 million views. Who knew?
Yeah. Yeah, because right now I have an artist that I was interested in, but they're underage, and I'd always said that I wasn't going to deal with any more underage artists.
Well, right there, if you're dealing with a minor, you can't do anything. If they want to get out of the deal, they can. There's nothing you can do about it if they're under 18 when they sign the deal. The only contracts the court will affirm minors as adults is record deals and TV deals, like when you're working exclusively for a label. But remember, a manager works for an artist. You can't go into court and have that approved. So yeah, when you're working with underage people, you're taking the risk. Because Barry Gordy, the first thing he would do with all those Motown kids, as soon as they turn 18, he'd have them re-sign the deal.
Yeah.
Because before that, it was just a risk.
Okay.
So, yeah, but I mean, obviously, people, look at Scooter Braun, worked with Justin Bieber when he was under 18, worked out fine, right? But there's no law that protects a manager when you're signing an underage. You're just going on trust and honesty of the artist and the artist's parents that they're going to stick with you or re-sign with you. Because usually, what happens is when a minor's under 18, there's an affirmation form that as soon as they turn 18, they sign it, affirming it for as long as it should have been, or you just have them re-sign it. But if you never have them re-sign it, even if they're 27 and they signed it when they were 17, they can still fire you anytime they want because they signed it when they were under 18, and the law allows them to do that. You know, so it's very risky. But obviously, somebody's got to work with minors. But me personally, not going to do it.
Yeah, no, I feel you.
I've been burned, but I can see why people would do it. You know. Because you know, the problem is most of the major labels now, they want to sign young people. You know, most of these artists I'm seeing that are big pop artists now, they're between 16 and 18. You know, when they're having their first hits. So obviously somebody was involved with them, and it worked out fine. But it's just a risk you take. You know, so I guess you'd have to weigh it out. You know, I'm just saying, but if you sign a minor, make sure you have them re-sign as soon as they're 18. So don't forget about that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, it's 1:25, so we got just a couple of questions so we can get you out of here on time.
Okay.
Mark Mozart asks, he typed, ask why no lawyer ever asks labels for ad revenue participation.
I do every time, every deal. It's you put a catch-all. When you do a record deal, if it's not written, and by the way, that's considered digital royalty now in most deals, and they'll just like say if they're paying an artist 15% of record sales or downloads or streaming, they'll try to throw the video ad rev in there at that rate. But I try to make it 50-50 because I think that's fair. But a lot of times in an agreement, there's a catch-all that says anything that's not listed specifically and any other royalties that come in that don't fit into a neat box, we're going to split it 50-50. So I always try to put the ad rev into that, and that's significant revenue now. So yeah, I never forget about it. I don't know which, if your lawyer's forgetting about it, they're not doing a good job. But most of the good lawyers that I know, they bring it up. I don't know. I mean, it's pretty commonplace now. So but if you're talking to somebody that hasn't done a record deal in 10 years, they might not know about it, because it didn't exist back then.
Okay, now this is...
But try to get 50-50. Try to get 50-50 on that if you can. At worst case, you're getting the same rate as records, but at least it's better than nothing. But but to me, it should be 50-50. Just like when a label puts a master in a TV show, a sync license, most agreements say it's a 50-50 split, right? So to me, it should fit in that category. It should be a 50-50 royalty split. I mean, even if you can get more than that, great. But certainly seems like that should be the norm. But if it's not in the deal, yeah, ask for it. So that's wise that you're thinking about that. If your lawyer's not bringing it up, you better remind them that they should bring it up. And by the way, lawyers aren't infallible, It's like sometimes they make mistakes or they don't know about something. So, bring it up if they're not. Just don't assume they're going to do it.
Okay, now this is extremely important. You can't mess this one up. Who is Venice Wong or Venice Wong?
That's my wife and my law partner.
I'm asking because she just posted on Facebook. She had posted on one of the posts where I'm letting everybody know about this. But she's your partner.
Yeah. She's my law partner. Yeah, she's an attorney too. Yeah, but by the way, and I would have. Sorry about that. Normally I pre-promote these kind of events, but I didn't know how to promote it with the link and all that, so I didn't tell any of my followers.
Not a problem, bro. Not a problem. Our Facebook group is pretty big. It's 18,400 people.
Oh, yeah.
So anybody who wants, and it's all music people. Anybody who wants this stuff, they'll find it. Okay, now your contact info. Would you give us your contact info?
Yeah, the best thing is just all my information is on my website, which is myname.com, BENMCLANE.com, BenMcLane.com. It's all there, but we're also in North Hollywood, and if you Google us, we should pop up,
Okay, so Keenan and who else was it? I do not know how to say this name. Ujkaj? Bruh, I know I just murdered your name. I apologize. But if anybody who has not asked a question has a question, now's the time to ask because he has to get out of here.
Can I just ask one question about distribution?
Sure.
How, and it's more to do with what is the best distribution deal to try and get? Because I was told they wanted to take 30% of whatever I out of my music or whatever. So I was just like to put it out.
Yeah. Well,
they said that they would take 30% of it, but I was like, I don't know whether that's
well,
high.
okay. Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing. If all they're doing is distributing your music, which mostly these days means they're putting it up on iTunes and Amazon, which you could do yourself, right? Most distributors take 15 to 20% for that because there's no physical product, there's no marketing that goes along with it. They're just throwing it up on the internet. Now, when they make physical product for it, it's costs them at least $1 to make it. They got to worry about shipping it to stores. They got to get it into stores. That's a big pain. Usually, it's 25 on average, maybe 30 for that. There's nothing if for physical, but usually there would be a distinction between physical and digital. Like, say physical would be 25%, digital would be 15%. That's the kind of deal you'd want to get if you can. If they're lumping it all together at 30%, you know, it's not a very fair deal. But if they're doing some marketing and promotion, maybe it is, you know, because if they're actually spending some of their own money taking out ads, co-op ads, or doing some kind of radio or video promotion, or taking out YouTube ads, or
they said to me that they wasn't going to do any of that.
Maybe they're taking a little bigger piece because they're actually spending some of their money. That's okay. But if they're not spending any money for marketing, 30 is pretty high. You know, it should be more like 25%. But it's not the end of the world. And again, if you're a brand new artist and nobody else wants to deal with you, well, then what are you going to do? But I mean, you know, anything over 30 would certainly be beyond the norm.
Okay.
All right, Ben. Go ahead.
No, it's just that they didn't say that. They wasn't interested in actually helping me promote or distribute it, other than putting it onto the.
I mean, you could do that yourself. You could do that yourself. What's the point? I don't understand. To me, a distributor is only good if there's physical demand for your product. It's very hard for you to get your physical record in whatever the record stores are in the UK. Over here, there are things like Walmart and Target and Best Buy. They don't even have record stores anymore other than indie ones. But you can't get your product in there unless you have a good distributor. You can't on your own do it. But you could go through a middle person like CD Baby or TuneCore or whatever, at least over here, and you could get on iTunes and Amazon. You don't need a distributor for that. You know, so usually a distributor has to add some value to me.
Okay.
They have to add some value. I don't see the point of it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Ben, it's 1:32. Is there any information that you'd like to put out or anything you'd like to say?
Well, you know, our firm's open for business, and we work with a lot of new people, and I could get excited working with new projects and new people. So if I can ever help you or you want to talk more, let me know. All my info's there, and like I said, we do on occasion represent new up and coming artists. That's exciting for us. It's hard to get deals, so I don't do it a lot. But I mean, you know, everybody's looking for the next Adele, Beatles, Katy Perry, whatever. I mean, we are too. So I mean, if you're developing something and you think it's great and you know want to get a lawyer's take on it or see if somebody can help on that level, I mean, I'm always happy to listen to things too.
Okay. This was good. We kept it flowing. Good information. I would love to do this with you sometime in the future. So whenever we're able to do it again, we have plenty more people.
Mark's a great patient moderator. He helped me get this all set up properly. So thank you, man.
Yeah, we worked through it. It was okay.
Yeah, you're doing a good service.
Okay, so everybody, we're done. Ben just rattled them off. I have a whole list. See, I could actually do this by myself, Ben, where it's you and I have a whole list of questions.
Okay.
Nobody even.
Maybe we can do it. You know, we can do it. Yeah, if you want to do another one down the line, I'm happy to do it. Bye, everybody.
All right, you take care,
Thanks,
Ben,
man.
and
Appreciate it.
say bye to your wife and everything. All right, you guys. The next one is going to be in about 2 days. You guys might remember NWA. Young youngsters might not. But then there's World Class Wrecking Crew. We're going to have Alonzo Williams on from World Class Wrecking Crew. He started Dr. Dre and him out on that whole thing. We're going to have questions about NWA, the whole history of West Coast hip hop. But this is going to be fun for me because I'm a hip hop head, and NWA was one of my favorite groups. All right, so you guys have any questions for me or each other before we head out? Nope. Hubby Hub.
No, I think I'm good. I'm gonna hit Ben up later.
All right, Keenan. Marciel.
Yeah, what's up?
You got any questions or anything before we head out? All right, Keenan.
Yeah, I had a question here. How you guys think starting bands should try to get the manager? You think go find it, or you think you should wait until it come to yourself? Should come to yourself, or you should go try to find it yourself? How you think it's better to?
The first thing I'm gonna say on that is you have to have something to manage, is what people always say whenever that question comes up. People are trying to go out and grab managers, but if a manager is out making money and is actually, an industry type cat, you have to have something for them to manage, like something that's actually worth them. Now, there's a manager in this group right now that I'm gonna have to just throw it to him. Hubby Hub, what's cracking? Let him know what's up.
Yeah, well, Ahmad is right. It's a lot better if you have something going. Nowadays, a lot of the ARs try to encourage is that you have your social media up and growing, on a day-to-day basis, and that you relate with your potential fans. If you are already doing shows, even if they're on a small scale, it'd be good to get someone to film them. They don't necessarily have to have the fancy red cameras and all that. Sometimes you can get away with some of these great phone cameras just to get footage showing the band from the fan standpoint, and then get on stage and show how the fans are responding to you. Because when you're looking for management, or if they're going to try to book you with shows, it helps to have footage to show potential promoters your band and how you guys sound, look, and how the fans relate to you. So it's always good to make sure that you document everything that you do visually, and that you are working on your social media constantly. Those two things will help, when you're trying to find management. Because like Bob says, you want to be in a position where you can monetize what your band is doing, so that it would make it worthwhile for the manager to take you on.
And Asha, you have anything on that?
Yes, I was actually just going to type because I didn't want to interrupt or anything. But yes, I'm sorry, I didn't see the gentleman's name that was just speaking. Mark, I believe. Yes, what Mark was saying is definitely what I encourage the talent that I work with. So I'm kind of on both sides of the brand development as well as the talent management or consulting. Doesn't necessarily have to be like an agreement. So a lot of times, before I even start managing anything, I say that first we have to develop the stuff, for the artist, so that it is of a quality that would appeal to an A&R rep or publishing or whomever, or even an agent, once we get to that point of having everything that we need. So, of course, you need your quality artwork, your, image, your website, your, again, all the stuff. So those components, like he was mentioning, your videos, your images, all of that needs to be created and put together, organized in a easy to see and view sort of form, usually in the form of a website, of course. But we need to develop all of the stuff based on your audience, your demographic, your music first, and then it's a lot easier to sell you, to package you, for a promoter to say, this is exactly who you're getting, and it makes sense to everyone, not only the people you're seeking out, but also to the fans. So I usually work with artists on just helping to create the stuff first. And then once you have all of the stuff, then we can say, okay, what's the next step? Do you now want to enter into a manager talent scenario, or did you just hire me for developing your stuff and now you can go find whoever you want? And that way you're a little bit more on even, not necessarily even, but a playing field where no one can tell, at least aesthetically, the difference between you, who just started, versus, you know, some of the professionals. Because if you have the time or connections or budget, you know, we can get a team together to create quality content that looks just as good as, you know, your top 40 artists.
Don, you finally made it in. but we're done with Ben. Don made it in after Ben has left the building. But how you doing, Don? Hello. Kenan says his mic is not working. Okay, so if Marcial wants a manager right now, if Marcial, do you have demand? Is there anybody like trying to book shows with you to where you need somebody to manage all of that, or what are you expecting from a manager?
I'm expecting somebody who can do what we don't have time to do. Like, I mean, you know, do the media stuff online, control the Facebook page, website, check how the statistics are going, like, you know, like managing website, the content which is going out to the publics, you know, this kind of things, like organizing the band, rehearsals, preparing good material for showing to the world, you know, checking that everything have a quality, you know. That's the kind of thing I'm kind of trying to figure out how to do better, you know, in a way like you cannot depend so much on the manager, like how much the artist can do. I mean, like how much you really can do to the point that you can really need a manager, you know what I mean? Like, I think the artist should really try to focus more on working on their music, and also you need a manager, because there's no, I don't think, there's ways you can do yourself, but still it's always good when you have a team working, you know, and people who can do their own thing and you do your own thing and you focus on something, you know, like Ben was saying, try to do your music if you are a musician, if you're a manager, do your manager. So, you know, it's kind of like ideas I have in my head, but I still have some things I'm not so clear about. So that's the reason I want to ask you guys, you know, you know about it, Mark. So thanks a lot. Yeah, it's great.
Asha and Hub, who would actually be the person to do that stuff for him?
So I was just commenting on that. So it's great that you bring up this point, because I just had a conversation with an artist about this the other day. So once you get to a certain level of your career or your visibility or demand or what have you, at some point, even the manager is only one person. And so therefore, the manager starts to become the director or gatekeeper for managing the other people that come on board to help manage you. So maybe hiring an affordable, say, social media manager, you know, then the manager would be the person who directs your vision of what you want, you know, puts together the schedule, puts together the plan, the itinerary for that social media manager. Or, you know, if you're doing freaking awesome and you get to a point where you just need an agent or a promoter who literally their job is not helping to manage you or develop you or brand you or style you or any of those things, but they're literally there just to help with bringing in money, you know. So at some point you have to, it's a constant growth, you know, so you have to figure out where are you. And so again, also the manager, if you're seeking a manager, they can't really manage you if you don't, again, have that stuff that I was talking about, because when they go to try and book you or try and represent on your behalf, they need something to show people. Otherwise it becomes, you know, nearly impossible. Or you want a manager to go out and network on your behalf, but you don't have business cards or you don't have, you know, a website. Like those tangible things, it makes it nearly impossible for a manager to even begin to do their job if you haven't invested in yourself by creating that content first. And that's, again, usually you can hire all those people individually, or like myself, like I was saying, I kind of do that in the beginning, and then you can decide what you want to do for management after that.
Yeah, so it's important because that part of what you were talking about is your marketing and your promotions. Mm-hmm. So you're going to have someone delegated to do that. And if you have a manager, because there's different levels to the management too. There's your business manager who basically will talk to your marketing team, promotion team, your touring manager that actually travels with you when you're doing shows. and they would all report back to the main manager that's handling all the business. But I mean, there's very affordable marketing and promotion companies out there, and there's also some that are a little bit more expensive. Something I encourage new artists that are starting out is to even talk to college students that's their specialty, that's what they're majoring in, and a lot of times they're very on top of everything social media wise, and they could help you at a much more reasonable rate than companies that are actually set up to do that, that are designed for those that have a stronger budget. And then that way you can create a big enough buzz for yourself that maybe you can start turning in, your promotion into revenue, and then you can afford companies and decide, which way you want to go as far as if you want to step it up and get a little bit stronger on your marketing and promotions. And when you get to that level, that will include your branding. You definitely need to put together, I don't know if anybody's ever told you the EPK, which basically stands for Electronic Press Kit. That kind of is like your biography in digital format where somebody could read it, see it, maybe some pictures of the band, or if you're solo. Just things that, like Asha was mentioning, that basically tells some that people that you're interested in doing business with something about you. And as long as you have a brand that you start building, you want to make sure that that's a focal point too of everything that you're doing, because that's going to represent either you as a solo artist or your band.
Cool. Also, I want to ask you about agents and managers. What is what is the difference between agents and managers? Like, kind of confusing about this,
A lot of times when they refer to agents, usually agents that refer to film. Actually, if you're on the acting side, and managers are usually refer to audio. A lot of times we deal with artists that are actually doing music, and they're actors or actresses. And what they end up doing is get an agent that represents them for going out and doing auditions for their visual side or film work, and then they have their managers that are working along with them on the music side. That's usually the different. Usually also, if a person is into modeling, they usually go with an agency that books modeling. It's just the more specialized work that the individual is doing, it's better for you as the artist, because you don't want to get somebody that's so stretched out. They're trying to represent you on your acting side and trying to represent you on your music side, and then they're stretched too thin, and you don't get the best of everything. So usually, if a person is doing acting and or modeling, they'll get an agency that'll represent them on that side, and then when they're doing music, they'll get a manager that represents them on the music side. But it's just different levels of management. You usually want a business manager that's over everything, and then touring managers. You have your publicists, you have your marketing promotion team, street teams, things like that. That all eventually answers back to the manager, the main one.
Yeah, in the good old days, agents just basically got you gigs, and managers took care of your whole career. Now, like you say, they're getting specialized and what have you.
Yeah.
Okay, now Christian Acosta just messaged me asking, he wants me to ask you guys, if a publishing company signs one of your tracks and it gets picked up for a TV show, he says, I got the fee for the beat, but how do I make sure I collect royalties that come from that?
Well, what they will usually do if it gets picked up on a show, they will have you sign a sync agreement that will allow the music to actually be synced up to the show that they're putting it, whether it's on TV or film. And then they fall in line with the RIAA and basically will pay you mechanical royalties based off of that. But that should be a part of it. And when they initially agree to pay you a fee, they should tell you that up front. Like, you should have schedule for the fee that you agree to being paid, and then right along with that, there should be another form that you sign that gives them permission to sync your music to whatever film that is being put into, and that agreement allows them to collect royalties. So if that movie goes to sale, whether it's in all these little outlets, Redbox, Netflix, or if it's a brand new film that's going to the box office, it puts you in a position where you can collect fees by having a sync agreement. I hope that answered this question.
Can you guys hear me over there?
Now I can, yeah.
Okay, I gotta lean like directly close into my mic, so I don't want to turn the mic on. But 2 questions for the sync licensing. Is 50-50 split a common agreement or a licensing tactic, or how does it typically work? 50-50 cut, basically.
Yeah, no, it's not usually the standard. It's basically whatever is negotiated out, because it depends upon how many writers you have involved in the record. You know what I mean? Okay. So I don't know if they're saying 50-50 from the standpoint of you did the music, somebody else did the lyrics, and they're splitting that among the two of you.
No. They're saying 50-50 split upon payment of placement of the track. This is for licensing. So basically what they're saying is if the track gets placed, whatever the fee is or whatever they're paying out, they want half of.
Yeah, that's kind of high. That's high. Normally, it's around 20%. Sometimes I've seen it as high as 30%. So what you're basically saying is they're saying that they could place that track into a per se show or movie, and for them doing that, they want 50% of whatever the movie agrees to pay you?
Correct.
Yeah, that's a little bit high. Yeah, that's high, bro. Well, what you could do is, this would have been perfect if Ben would have been here, because if you get a entertainment attorney to actually set your agreement up, then you can negotiate back and forth. Because sometimes what they'll do, when they know that you're kind of new, they will try to push the envelope and get as much of it out as possible. So if they were to send that to you and you just handed that over to your entertainment attorney, the entertainment attorney would fire right back at them with another counteroffer, and then they would go back and forth, and then once it gets down to whatever he negotiated is close to where you want it to be, then he or she would tell you, this is where it's at. I went back and forth with them. Yeah, I know they said 50%. I got them down to 25 or whatever. Are you willing to accept it? But 50 is pretty high just for them to walk it into a place, because you could do a direct deal with a music supervisor yourself if you knew some music supervisors, you know what I mean, and not have to give up anything.
Right. Okay.
So that's why
nothing written in stone. Every contract is negotiable. Every aspect of it is negotiable. How they have standard. Excuse me, I got a frog in my throat here. You have your standard, boilerplate. This is sort of what they want to throw at you. But every point, every paragraph, every article is totally negotiable.
Yeah.
And I would say I'd agree. Yeah, 50% is that's probably your standard PRO arrangement for a singer-songwriter and the publishing company. But I agree. I don't think 50% is anywhere reasonable for placing something in a film or a TV show. I think it's awfully high, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I totally agree with him. He is so right. Everything is negotiable. Because if you ever see contracts being negotiated out, a lot of times different attorneys work different ways, but sometimes what they do for you, so you could see it real easily, they might write something in red pen or green pen and send it back to you so you can see where the changes are. Mm-hmm. But it's all negotiable. But I totally agree with him. 50% is it's high, bro. It almost seems like they think you're new, and if they can get it, they'll get it. And they probably hope you would not take it to an entertainment attorney or, you know, management that would look it over for you. You know?
Exactly.
Right. Okay, and I guess the last question before Ben left, but quick question, and you guys might know. So, say for example, if I decided to move from where I'm at, do I have to register my business in the state that I plan on moving to?
Not necessarily. There's certain things. It depends. Are you set up as a LLC or
Yes.
is it just under the name?
LLC.
There's some advantage. What state are you currently in?
Missouri.
Missouri. There's certain advantages, but I would have maybe get like a little consultation, maybe 15-minute, 30-minute consultation with an attorney to ask what would be the best setup for an LLC being set up in a different state, because your Missouri LLC might be better for you depending upon taxes and how it works out. Because I know California is one of the highest, places that you could possibly set up, and I know a lot of people from California will actually live in California and go set their LLC up in Nevada. So it's possible you could set it up in a different state without living there. But I would just see is it really advantageous for you, because you might have the best deal in Missouri currently. It might be better than the state that you're going to. You know what I mean?
My main concern with that was actually seeing if it was legal, or would I have to take precautions on registering in that other state.
No, it's legal. I mean, you might want to, if you're doing business, that state might require you to set up a business license in the state. But you should still be able to take your LLC to whatever state you go to and list that. You know what I mean? But if they might require you to set up a fictitious name or something in the state that you're moving in. But there's nothing illegal by you being in two different states when you set your LLC up. It's just a matter of, if you're going to set a bank account up there and either use your business name, you just have to provide them with all the information that's on your LLC and the state that you signed it up in.
Understood.
But then again, like I said, just for double, because I always double check myself all the time, and I'll call an attorney like Ben say, short little thing, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, because you can answer that question so quick, and a lot of times they can pull something up and tell you if the state you're going in is better. You might be able to even switch the information over to the state that you're going in and just pay a fee. So I would double check it just to be sure, because if it'll help you out and save you something on taxes or whatever, it'd be worth it.
Right. All right, sounds good.
What were you about to say, Don?
Well, I can't really comment on the states because I don't live there, as I'm in Canada. And the same thing applies. You register in the province that you live in, and you can do business across the country. And the taxes you will pay typical federal taxes, but any provincial taxes would be in your province only, even though you may have accrued a whole whack of money in Alberta as opposed to Ontario or something. That was basically all I was going to say.
Okay. Didn't know you were in Canada, but okay.
Hey, don't hold it against me, please. It's like 30. Well, sorry, not 30. It's like 90 degrees out today.
Wow.
And I'm in the capital of the Great White North, freezing my butt off. Yeah, right. Not today. Talk to me in February. It will be 30 below. I guarantee you.
Wow.
Yeah, we've got several Canadians in Pensado students, and
I know most of them too.
Yeah, and Herb's are Canadian.
Yep.
Okay, you guys, huh? I thought you were about to say something. All right.
I wanted to ask a question as I missed Ben. Was the bulk of his conversation regarding artists, or did he get into like yourself, Matt, and myself, who are mix engineers or recording engineers? Did he have any information applying to us that might have been out of the norm?
We did not ask.
You didn't ask.
I was waiting on you, bro. I was waiting on you to come in and ask him.
Well, I had this really, for lack of a better word, meticulous young lady from India, and I was doing her vocals, mixing her vocals, and yeah, meticulous is the word I use. There is another couple of words that one could use. Anyway, she was driving me up the wall. We finally finalized the gig, and then I go back to Facebook and go, ah, shit, man, I missed the damn thing. Oh, no, I didn't. And then I had to go hook up Google Hangout and all this fun stuff. I'm an old fart here, so all this is new stuff to me. My son would be sitting here going, Dad, like, get into the 90s, eh? You know? So anyway, I was late coming here, but I mean, I would have definitely had a couple of questions with regards to our particular avenue, as in the recording and mix engineers and mastering engineers too. You know, advantages, disadvantages of having like a Herb handling you, or any specifics. I just really wish I had been here, but such is life, you know.
I'll work to get him back on and see if we can get another lawyer on, and I should get another manager on. We had a long one with Herb that's on the internet. It's like 6.5 hours.
Yes.
Talking with Herb.
I popped in and out of that one, namelessly, anonymously. Unfortunately, it's one of those things I couldn't sit down and, you know, take it all in. It would have been great if you could have recorded it, or did you? That's something.
It's on the internet. Look up Herb Traway,
okay.
Hangout.
Will do.
Herb Traway. I need to do one with Dave. Me and Dave Pensado, we've been saying we're going to do one. We'll get around to it.
Yeah, way back, I think about 4 years ago, Eric, well, Mixerman, Eric brought in a lawyer and a entertainment lawyer and a business manager, and they both sat down on one of Mixerman's radio shows. They only had a very small segment, but in that segment, the entertainment lawyer got bombarded with questions from all AEs, you know, or MEs, and it was like very cool to hear that a lot of us are thinking along the same lines. And anyway, it was very cool.
We need to get Eric started on Google Hangouts or something. Get him a show going on then.
Oh, he's far too busy. He's a busy boy. Yeah.
All right, you guys. That's it. I got to get out of here.
Well, you have a good one.
You take care, bro. See you guys later.
All right. Take care.
Ciao.
Take care. Bye.
Later.